The sun had barely dipped below the horizon, casting a warm, golden hue over the quiet studio lot, and yet, inside, the air felt heavy. You could almost hear the tension weaving itself into every corner, like the calm before a storm no one could see coming. Sonia Uche walked through the lot with her usual grace, unaware of the undercurrents flowing around her. But for Maurice Sam, every step she took was like a small earthquake shaking his world, even if he didn't want to admit it. He had told himself for weeks that he was fine, that he could watch from a distance, that it was enough to know she was near. And yet, every small gesture she received from Brian, every laugh, every moment of attention, gnawed at him with a quiet, relentless ache. Brian had been there for her in ways Maurice hadn't noticed until now. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't dramatic. It was in the way he always appeared at the right time, carrying a cup of warm water when she coughed, or a pen when she needed to sign scripts, a comforting word when stress clouded her eyes. Maurice had observed all this, pretending nonchalance while his chest tightened. He had tried to ignore it. He had told himself she belonged to him in some unspoken territory, that she would eventually circle back. Yet the more he ignored, the more the quiet realization built inside him. Brian was not just a presence, he was a force, steady and deliberate, and Maurice had to confront it before it silently conquered the ground he thought was his. Sonia, meanwhile, was oblivious to the storm brewing so close. She had noticed subtle shifts in Maurice's attention, small attempts to bridge gaps, but she had also grown accustomed to Brian's unwavering steadiness. Life had a way of complicating even the simplest hearts, and hers had suddenly become a battlefield she hadn't signed up for. Her laughter with Maurice felt like reclaiming lost ground, fragile and fleeting, yet every smile Brian drew from her was another nail in the quiet coffin of her certainty. She felt the tension before it arrived, that invisible tug-of-war that men apparently always played, a silent game where gestures, timing, and intention were the only weapons. Maurice had tried calm for weeks, for months even. He had tried to act as if he didn't care, as if Brian's steady presence was irrelevant, as if his own heart could be quieted by pretending. But pretense has limits. Watching Brian step in at every moment, making her feel safe, appreciated, and seen, chipped at his carefully maintained facade. The quiet, boiling anger inside him wasn't loud, it wasn't explosive in the public sense, but it was there, pulsing like a slow, relentless drumbeat, demanding attention, demanding action. And so, one quiet afternoon, Maurice decided he could wait no longer. He approached Brian with a calmness that masked the hurricane inside him, his voice low, measured, careful to avoid even the hint of jealousy or accusation. "I don't know how to put this gently," he said, his eyes fixed on Brian, "but your constant attention to Sonia, it's becoming too much. It's interfering with what we're trying to rebuild." Maurice spoke like a man measuring every word, conscious that a single wrong syllable could ignite the storm he had worked so hard to contain. Brian's response was almost cinematic in its quiet shock. He blinked, taking in Maurice's words, a small laugh escaping him, not mocking, not dismissive, but a soft acknowledgement of surprise. "Wait," Brian said, his calm voice steady, almost unnervingly so, "you want me to step back? You, who pretended not to care. You, who acted like she was nothing, like her presence didn't matter." The words landed with surgical precision, cutting through Maurice's carefully constructed armor. The realization hit Maurice harder than anything else Brian had observed, remembered, and now held him accountable for the moments he had wasted. Maurice froze, his jaw tightening, anger and regret coiling in his chest like twin serpents. Brian didn't yell. Brian didn't raise his voice. He simply reminded Maurice of the past with a quiet authority that was more potent than any shout. "I am serious about her," Brian continued, his eyes locked on Maurice's, "and I'm not going to let anyone, not even you, undo what I've worked for. You had your chance, you wasted it." The words landed like stones in a still pond, rippling through Maurice's thoughts, shaking every notion of pride and entitlement he had held onto. And then Maurice understood, fully. He understood the weight of his mistakes, the quiet cruelty of neglect, the way his own pride had pushed Sonia to seek steadiness elsewhere. Every step he had taken away from her, every cold word left unsaid, every moment of inattention, it all led to this confrontation. The anger he felt wasn't just at Brian, it was at himself, at the opportunities he had let slip, at the subtle ways he had failed the woman he loved most. "Brian," in his calmness, had already made a decision. He wasn't going to step back. Not because he wanted to provoke Maurice, but because he had seen the depth of Sonia's worth, and he intended to honor it consistently. His presence was not a game, it was a testament to his commitment, his patience, and his genuine regard. Every smile, every gesture, every carefully timed word was deliberate, quiet, steady, and emotionally calculated. He had not sought to overshadow Maurice, he had simply acted in alignment with the gravity of his own intentions. Sonia noticed the subtle tension, even if she couldn't fully articulate it. She noticed Maurice's renewed presence, his careful attention, his attempts to bridge gaps with vulnerability and humility. She noticed Brian's steady devotion, the way he never forced himself into moments, but simply offered consistent, quiet assurance. Her heart, usually so certain, began to wrestle with the weight of past affection versus present reliability. Every glance, every small touch, every shared laugh now carried layers of meaning she hadn't anticipated. The silent competition between Maurice and Brian grew with every passing day. It was not loud. It was not dramatic. It was a battlefield where subtlety, timing, and emotional integrity were the weapons. Maurice rebuilt with intensity born of regret and love, attempting to restore trust and warmth. Brian built steadily, deliberately, creating consistency and reliability that spoke louder than any grand gesture could. Both men cared deeply, but their methods were different, one reactive, passionate, and emotional, the other patient, strategic, and unwavering. Maurice's internal journey was as potent as any external conflict. He confronted the part of himself that had failed, recognized his prideful mistakes, and attempted to approach Sonia with authenticity. Apologies were offered, not as excuses, but as acknowledgement of past failures. Moments of connection became intentional, not forced, as he learned to balance emotion with respect, eagerness with patience. Every interaction carried weight, and every moment reflected growth. Brian's journey mirrored Maurice's in its own way. His calmness, often mistaken for disinterest, was in fact a deep emotional calculation. He knew the importance of patience, of steady presence, of silent respect. Every gesture reinforced his intentions, to be reliable, to honor Sonia's autonomy, to demonstrate that his care was not fleeting or performative. His quiet determination became a force that was both comforting to Sonia and challenging to Maurice. Sonia herself became the axis on which this delicate drama revolved. Her heart, previously bruised by neglect, now oscillated between two men who cared for her deeply but differently. She reflected on her past with Maurice, the chemistry, history, passion, and moments of true connection, but she also recognized Brian's consistency, attentiveness, and quiet respect. Each choice carried emotional weight, and every day presented her with the complexity of balancing past love with present devotion. The studio, the crew, and even casual observers noticed the subtle shifts. Conversations held a different tone. Glances lingered longer. Moments of laughter carried unspoken tension. This was a silent battle, a slow-burning narrative of intention versus passion, consistency versus history, quiet strategy versus emotional urgency. And through it all, Sonia's presence was the gravitational force, shaping and directing the course of every interaction. For Maurice, the realization that he had to confront his past failures was liberating but painful. He understood that love required humility, presence, and deliberate action. He could no longer rely on history or assumption. He had to prove, in every interaction, that he had grown, that he had learned, and that he valued Sonia's heart as fiercely as Brian's consistent devotion. Every step, every word, every gesture now carried the weight of accountability. For Brian, the confrontation with Maurice reinforced his belief in quiet strength. Love, he understood, was not a battle of words or a display of pride, but an exercise in patience, consistency, and respect. Every subtle act of care became a silent assertion of intent, demonstrating to Sonia, and indirectly to Maurice, that true devotion was measured not in dramatic gestures, but in sustained, steady attention. The emotional tension continued to ripple, and Sonia's heart weighed every detail. She experienced the warmth of reconciliation with Maurice, the quiet devotion of Brian, and the internal struggle of balancing gratitude, affection, history, and present experience. Her journey became an intricate dance of self-discovery, emotional awareness, and intentional reflection, where each moment influenced the unfolding drama. And so the story remains in flux. Decisions are pending, emotions simmering, intentions clear, yet outcomes uncertain. Maurice is rebuilding, Brian is building, and Sonia is navigating the intersection of past love and present care. The narrative is alive, dynamic, and evolving, each heartbeat, glance, and choice contributing to a story that feels as cinematic and rich as any Netflix original. The lesson of this story is clear: love is rarely simple. Redemption requires intention, consistency demands patience, and hearts, even those most familiar, must be tended with care. Mistakes cannot be undone, but growth can be demonstrated. Actions speak, not words alone, and every gesture carries weight in the delicate ecosystem of human emotion. As viewers, we watch, invested and engaged, seeing the slow burn of human interaction, the complexity of emotions, the silent battles fought in hearts and minds. There is humor in the subtle awkwardness, suspense in every glance, drama in every small touch, and tension in every measured word. This is storytelling at its most human, most relatable, and most immersive. And now, as we step back from this story, the question remains: who will Sonia choose? Will history reclaim its place, or will steady devotion forge a new path? The answer is not yet written, and every action from here on shapes the final outcome. What we do know is that each character, Maurice, Brian, Sonia, is profoundly human, making choices that reflect love, regret, hope, and courage in equal measure. So here's where you come in, the viewer, the witness to this unfolding drama. Think about the choices, reflect on the hearts involved, and consider what you would do in such a tangled web of emotion. Drop your thoughts below. Share your predictions. Engage with the story, because this narrative is far from finished, and your voice is part of the audience that shapes its life. Hit subscribe if you want more updates, turn on notifications so you never miss a beat, and stay tuned, because the next chapter promises even more depth, emotion, and unexpected turns.